Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. The concept of Anakin surviving past Return of the Jedi has been written many times, the first being an official comic from the Star Wars Infinite series that were released in the early 2000s. Anakin surviving the duel on the Death Star and living on after Return of the Jedi is something that really fascinates me as both a storyteller and someone who greatly admires the character of Anakin. Now, what if we took that idea from the Infinite comic and gave it a unique twist, that being Anakin not only surviving, but switching places with his son Luke? As with all what-if stories, there is no definitive version, as the story depends on what the writer wants to tell. With my stories, I like to mix elements from both canon and the expanded universe. It allows for more creativity and prevents restrictiveness without needing to commit to one singular timeline of events. So, let's begin part 1 of this Star Wars Elseworlds story. What if Luke died instead of Anakin in Return of the Jedi? We know what happened in the original timeline. Anakin lifted Palpatine and threw him down the reactor shaft, saving his son in the process, and eliminating the Sith for good, thus fulfilling the prophecy of the Chosen One. We're going to ignore that this ever happened, since it contradicts the George Lucas story of the prophecy. In this universe, the divergence that changed everything moving forward was in this moment. Vader, or Anakin, reacted far too late to save his son from the wrath of the Emperor. He was a couple seconds too late. This resulted in Palpatine's lightning being too overwhelming for Luke. Sidious had paused his attack on the young Jedi. He wanted to get one last glance at Luke before he perished. Even at the brink of this punishment and agony, Luke still had hope that his father would return. He spoke this out, which only enraged the Emperor more. The cruel old man glared at the helpless Skywalker, motioning his hands up for one final strike of lightning, one last lethal blow to end his life. Palpatine proclaimed that Luke would fall like the Jedi and his father did. And just as he was preparing to end Luke's life, Anakin, like in the original scene, yelled out no, as he rushed in front of his son, grabbing his green lightsaber with the Force and igniting it. Anakin Skywalker had finally returned from the depths of the darkness within Vader. He held on tight to Luke's lightsaber, deflecting the flashing Force lightning away. Palpatine had yelled out loud that since Anakin had dared to betray him, he would share the same fate as his son, as he referred to his former apprentice as Skywalker.
Now, Skywalker, you will die.
Palpatine soon showed a look of concern. He sensed that the Death Star was minutes away from being destroyed. The lightning got brighter and hotter, and finally a massive explosion within the throne room lit up the area in a flash. Anakin had fallen back from the impact. When he regained his focus and stood up, he noticed that his former master was nowhere to be seen. He couldn't sense him. Anakin turned his attention to his dying son. He kneeled down to check up on Luke. With one hand, he wrapped Luke's arm around his neck and walked towards the elevator. Anakin had not been injured by Sidious's lightning, so his movements were not hindered. In the hangar bay, Anakin had gently laid his son down. He told Luke that he wished to see him with his own eyes, to which Luke replied, as he struggled to get a word out, to not do so, because he'll die. Anakin said that he was already a dead man, and that he wished to see his son with his own eyes before Luke left him. Even with just one hand, Anakin still had managed to remove the upper part of his helmet. For the first time, Luke had been looking at the eyes of his father, and not the soulless black lenses of Vader's mask. Anakin was relieved to see his son, without the strain and visual impairment of his helmet's eyesight. Luke showed worry and pity at the sight of his father's scarred face, but when Anakin smiled at him, Luke returned the gesture. The two shared a warm moment.
Now, go, Father. Leave me, before it's too late.
No, you are coming with me. I'll not leave you here. I must save you, Luke.
You already have, Father. I was right. I was right about you. You came back to us. Tell Leia, you came back.
Luke smiled one last time as he slowly fell back. Anakin pleaded with him.
Luke, please.
His life force slowly faded away.
I won't leave you, son.
Luke's eyes slowly shut. A sorrowful gaze covered Anakin. Tears streamed down from his pale, scarred face as he was heartbroken at the death of his only son, the only person who believed in him. On the forest moon of Endor below, rebels and Ewoks cheered at the sight of the Death Star exploding above in the sky. We cut to the scene where Han had been attending to Leia's blaster wound. As he wrapped the bandage over her arm, Han glanced up at the sky before he looked back to Leia.
I'm sure Luke wasn't on that thing when it blew.
Before Leia responded, her blank expression was wiped away. With a look of sadness, she told Han that he was on it.
I can feel it,
Said Leia. Later into the night, our heroes had been celebrating the destruction of the second Death Star and their victory on Endor. While the others were celebrating this monumental moment, Leia was not present with them. The princess had been alone at the village bridge, where she last spoke to Luke before he went to confront Vader and the Emperor, believing that his father could be turned. Leia was absolutely heartbroken as she stared into the night sky. While the fireworks and passing ships were a sign of clear victory, she still felt that they somehow lost. She could feel it deep down. Han approached Leia after not being able to find her in the center, where everyone had been. He wanted to check up on her. As he walked up to speak with Leia, in attempts to comfort her, Leia slowly began to open up to Han about the death of Luke. He told her that he's sorry about what had happened. He too was saddened at the loss of their friend. Han asked Leia if she loved him, to which she said of course, stating that he was her brother. It's here where Leia explained to Han what Luke had told her. She stated that Luke revealed to her that they're siblings, and that soon she will learn to use the same power he has. Leia paused for a moment, looking Han directly in the eye, right as she revealed to him that Luke also informed her that Vader was his father. Han was confused but shocked at this revelation, right as he realized that Leia is his daughter. He didn't quite understand how this could be true, believing Han would see her a different way. Leia turned her back in shame. He noticed this, and instead of stepping away, he embraced her with a warm hug. Soon after, Leia felt a presence of something hurt and broken. Her and Han could hear the mechanical breathing of Vader's mask, just a few feet away from them. As Leia looked up, there stood Anakin Skywalker, holding Luke in his arms. Han immediately drew his weapon at the sight of Vader. He couldn't make out who he was holding, due to the darkness and the shadows being casted over Luke by the nearby trees. But Leia, she knew. Anakin limped towards them. He then stopped and stated that he failed and he couldn't save him. The defeated Skywalker dropped to his knees and carefully laid Luke's lifeless body down. He glanced up to meet Han and Leia's shocked expression. Under her breath, Leia spoke Luke's name, in absolute horror at the sight of her brother's dead body. A tear streamed down from her eye. She already knew he was dead, because she couldn't feel his life force. Han told Vader not to move by threatening to shoot him. He told Leia to go get the others, and in a quick instant, she sprinted to where the rebels were celebrating. Minutes later, Chewie, Lando, Leia, and a few rebel troops came rushing to Han's aid. Anakin had motioned his head down in sadness as he allowed the rebels to take him into custody. The following day, aboard Admiral Akbar's ship, the Home One, Anakin had been restrained in a jail cell. Han, Leia, Chewie, Lando, Mon Mothma, and other rebel officials stood outside of his cell, with rebel troops guarding it. Vader was confronted and interrogated here by Leia and the others. It was Mon Mothma who first spoke up. She told Vader that given the circumstances of the current conflict and his reputation amongst the rebellion, he would still indeed be given a fair trial. She continued on, telling him that if he cooperated with rebel intelligence, he may be spared an execution, but that depended on the tribunal that would judge him in the following year to come. For good reason, many individuals in the rebellion would want nothing more than to see Vader dead. Anakin understood this. Even though he redeemed himself in the Force and in the eyes of his son, he did not, however, redeem himself to the rebels, especially Leia, his daughter and only living bloodline. Anakin slowly lifted his head from the shame he felt. The soulless black lenses of his mask met Mon Mothma's eyes. He responded to her, saying he only wished to seek their forgiveness and he does not expect them to forget the things he had done. Anakin added that he will help them and will freely give up the Empire's secrets, and whatever fate they chose for him, he will accept what they deem necessary. The rebel generals acknowledged this. Even as evil as he was, they understood he was their most valuable asset. As Vader was only second to the Emperor, the information he held was invaluable and could prove to switch the tide of the ongoing conflict drastically. For this, he wasn't executed immediately, just as Ram Koda also believed in The Force Unleashed 2.
Wait! You want him dead as much as I do. Yes, but not yet. Not until he's told us the Empire's secrets. You want to take him prisoner? To a hidden rebel base where we can interrogate him. Put him on trial for crimes against the true Republic. And then we'll execute him.
The next thing addressed to Vader was the obvious elephant in the room. Leia took a step forward and asked the former Sith Lord how Luke died. Inside his helmet, Anakin frowned in sadness. There was a silent pause with no words spoken. Leia gave him an ice-cold stare, then shouted, "How did Luke die?" Anakin replied to his daughter's painful outcry by saying that he failed to save him. The rebel leaders all looked to each other with confusion. He stated that Luke boarded the Death Star with the hope of turning him back to the light, and that he refused to kill him. Anakin then said that the Emperor had likely escaped. When they asked him where, he replied that he wasn't entirely sure. With this knowledge, the rebels couldn't afford to execute Vader this soon. Who better to know where Palpatine was than his second in command? Akbar and Mothma stated that for the time being, Vader would be imprisoned so that he may share the Empire's secrets, up until his tribunal. This happened once the New Republic capital was officially established, on Mon Mothma's homeworld of Chandrila in the following year, just like in the new canon. Once they finished speaking, Leia requested to be alone with Vader. Mon Mothma agreed, knowing how personal this was to her. She knew that Vader stood by as Alderaan was destroyed by Tarkin many years ago. It's here where Anakin and Leia have a similar argument to the one from the Truce of Bakura, the Now Legends novel, where Anakin visited Leia as a ghost to ask for forgiveness. Sensing the fear and anger inside of his daughter, Anakin was prepared to be met with harsh words and full hostility. He understood why and didn't fault her, but it still hurt. It hurt him just as much as losing Luke, because in a way, he had also lost Leia by choosing the path of the dark side.
Please, do not fear me, Leia. I'm your father. I could never hurt you.
A chill started at her feet and shivered its way up to her scalp. His very voice and presence sparked every dark emotion she owned. Hatred.
Well, you did. You hurt me and so many others.
I know, and I wish to atone for it. You are filled with anger as I once was. Before Luke saved me, I beg your forgiveness, Leia.
You dare ask for forgiveness?
Her anger had begun to swell up inside, and Anakin felt this.
I am no longer the man that you once feared, and I understand now the pain and suffering that I caused you and your allies. I am remorseful, Leia, about everything.
No apologies can account for what you've done. You can't restore Alderaan, my home, and Bail Organa, who I will always think of as my true father. You can't bring back the people you murdered, or comfort their widows and orphans. You can't undo what you did to the Alliance. You can't bring back Luke, my brother.
Old pain stabbed her like a fresh wound. Anakin felt this pain too. He felt a hot puncture in his chest. He was incredibly devastated. He begged Leia to believe that Luke saved him from the dark side.
Leia, there is no excuse for my actions, but Luke saw the good in me. He believed that I could do the right thing in the end, when no one, not even the Emperor, would. He believed that I would choose the right path. And now, I believe you can do that too. Don't let your heart be consumed by hate.
She crossed her arms and clenched her hands around her elbows.
But I'm not Luke, or your teacher, or your confessor. I'm only your daughter by a cruel trick of fate.
Of the Force. Even that served a purpose. I am proud of your strengths and the leader you have become. I do not ask for absolution, only your forgiveness.
I can almost forgive you for torturing me. And the evils you did to other people, because those drove so many worlds into the Alliance. But cruelty to Han? And being the reason for Luke's demise? No! If you want to go through me, you won't get his forgiveness. Like you got Luke's. Never.
Never is too large a word, my child.
Darth Vader lecturing her about virtue and forgiveness, Leia had enough.
I will never forgive you. You will never be my father. You will spend the rest of your life with no one but yourself and the cries of your victims in your sleep.
Leia had enough as she rushed out, walking past Han, Mon Mothma, and the others. She secluded herself in her room aboard the ship. Leia shaked with confusion and rage. She felt Vader was being genuine. Deep down, she felt this but didn't care. Leia refused to believe that Darth Vader could be good. This confliction was just the beginning of her arc for the coming year. In the following week, Vader was discreetly transported to an unknown location, a secret rebel base somewhere in the galaxy. This is where Anakin would spend the duration of the year, locked in a dark cell with minimal movement. It's here where he spent the rest of his days feeding Imperial secrets to rebel spies and high-level officials. In order to minimize the threat of Vader being rescued by Imperials, the inner circle of Mon Mothma, Akbar, Leia, and other generals present during Vader's capture did not spread the word of his arrest, as this would make them vulnerable to Imperial spies finding out and potentially sending a task force to break him out, as Vader was far too valuable. A few nights after the death of Luke Skywalker, Anakin dwelled in his never-ending misery and pain until he felt a presence he hadn't felt in a while. He heard his voice being called out through the Force.
Obi-Wan.
It's good to see you again, Anakin.
Master, please forgive me. I have failed you in every way. My crimes are unspeakable.
You are forgiven, but you can still atone for your actions and make things right.
I don't believe that I can. I have destroyed and lost everything close to me.
Not everything is gone, Anakin. You have Leia.
How? What must I do?
Leia is very powerful in the Force. She needs a teacher. Someone who can train her. But most importantly, she needs her father. Together, you can both rebuild and reshape the Jedi Order better than it ever was. Trust in the Force that she will forgive you. And in time, you can train her to be a far greater Jedi than any of us. I have faith in you, Anakin. Just as Qui-Gon did. Just as Luke did.
Is this my destiny? What of the Sith?
The path facing forward will soon reveal itself. The Force will be with you, as will we.
In the weeks following his relocation, Anakin revealed that Palpatine had secret observatories scattered throughout the galaxy, such as the one on the planet of Pillio from the Battlefront 2 campaign. There may lie valuables that could be of help to the rebels, but he did warn that the only way to open the door of this observatory was with the Force. At first, they believed he may have been lying in order to plan an escape, until they sent rebel spies to survey the area. When Imperial activity was confirmed, they acknowledged this finding. Ultimately, Han, Leia, and Chewie were sent to Pillio, along with Vader, tightly restrained with a bomb inserted in the back of his helmet, so if he stepped out of line, it would automatically detonate. What happens here is straightforward. Anakin guides Han, Leia, and Chewie through the caves of Pillio. In one instance, Han and Chewie were almost killed by a collapsing cave, until Anakin saved them using the Force. Leia didn't view this as a virtue by Vader. In her eyes, it wouldn't benefit him if he allowed Han to die. When they arrived in the front door, he used the Force like Luke did in the original timeline to open the sealed vault. Afterwards, Leia told Han and Chewie to take Vader back to the Falcon, as Chewie placed his restraints back on. Leia entered the vault and took a look around. She didn't find anything that could be helpful. It was mostly junk, until she heard a faint whisper. She believed it was the vault making noises, but the whisper spoke again. Leia, she heard. It came from the direction of a specific box. The voice that whispered to her wasn't familiar. She couldn't make out who it was. It sounded too faint. Finally, she arrived at a crate and opened it. It was the compass that Luke found in the other timeline. She could feel a sense of importance radiating from it. Her feelings told her such. She placed it in her pocket and informed Rebel intelligence to bring reinforcements to survey and take what was left, to further investigate. As the months go by, a variety of events happened that led Leia to be even more conflicted about her father. By this point in the year, a version of the Star Wars Legends novel, Tatooine Ghost, occur. Leia, Han, Chewie, and C-3PO were on a mission The crew was in search of an old Alderaanian painting that was rumored to be auctioned on the desert world of Tatooine. They needed to acquire this painting, as it contained encrypted codes used by the rebels, as means of covertly communicating with their spies in the Empire. Leia believed this painting was destroyed, along with Alderaan, due to it being in transit to the planet prior to its destruction. She had overheard one of the items being auctioned contained a hologram of young Anakin after he won the pod race, making history as the first human to win. Hearing the name of her father, who was secretly Darth Vader, confused her. She didn't understand why such an item even existed. Regardless, the hologram sparked Leia's interest, which led her to meet Wald and a few other natives who knew her father as a child. When the subject matter was brought up, he spoke highly of Anakin, stating how he had given him and all the other children hope of leaving the planet and achieving their dreams like he did. Upon learning that Anakin was a slave, Leia became even more conflicted, believing him being a slave painted Vader as a victim. At this point, Leia still had not forgiven Anakin. Everyone who Leia came across that knew of Anakin, who did the impossible of winning the pod race, saw him as a hero, especially the slaves who became motivated of earning their freedom like Skywalker did. Seeing her father being viewed as a hero made Leia sick to her stomach, still not believing Vader was the touching child everyone claimed to be. Eventually, the four rebels came across Anakin's childhood best friend, Kixter, who was all grown up by now. Kixter discovered what Anakin had done when he returned to Tatooine as a Jedi Padawan, how he managed to massacre an entire village of Tuskens, but he understood why his friend did it. To Kixter, he believed Anakin must have regretted his actions that day, as he always had an extreme emotional reaction to injustices he saw. This comment stuck to Leia. Kixter acknowledged that Anakin had become Darth Vader, believing the great pain he felt as a slave and losing his mother explained why he became such a ruthless monster. After Leia mentioned this, despite acknowledging this, Kixter still believed there was always good within Anakin, even when he was Vader, and that he must have always regretted the slaughter of the Sand People. Later on, Leia came across the diary of Shmi Skywalker. In her diary, where Shmi Skywalker had written all the good things Anakin had done while as a child, and who he was as a person, Leia now had a better understanding of who Anakin was prior to becoming Vader. She understood Kixter's side more, but was still conflicted inside. A part of her could feel that Anakin was truly sorry for the crimes he had committed, but her emotions and judgment simply refused to see the good in him. While on board to deliver the painting to a rebel base, Leia closed the diary and went to the cockpit with Han and Chewie as to get her mind off of things. For the next few months leading into the trial of Darth Vader, Leia had been consumed by her conflictions on how she felt about her biological father. Officially founded a year after the Battle of Endor, the New Republic and its fledgling government soon chose Chandrila as their capital, while the Galactic Senate was re-established, and its newly seated members elected Mon Mothma as the Chancellor, just like in Legends. Vader was transported to a high-security prison near the capital of Chandrila shortly after. He continued giving the Empire secrets under extreme supervision. His official trial would later happen in the months following the New Republic's establishment on Chandrila. When medical personnel were running diagnostics on Vader's suit, Leia was present for it, behind a glass barrier. They were running maintenance on his suit to make sure he stayed alive, in case of any electrical failures. One thing that caught the attention of the doctors is that the cybernetics inside his suit were extremely outdated and designed to cause him pain and misery. When this was brought up, Leia took a closer look through the glass, where she saw Vader stand still on the metal holdings that had him binded. Leia felt his immense pain and depression. She was beginning to feel bad for him, as the thought of someone living in those conditions were inhumane. She unknowingly started a force connection, which woke Vader up. When he tilted his head to meet Leia's eyes, she turned away and walked out of the medical bay. The conflict in Leia grew larger. She started to feel a sense of sympathy for his painful conditions, on top of what she's found out about him regarding his past life as a slave boy. As we approach a chilly night on Chandrila, Leia couldn't sleep as she was dwelling on her father, so she sat up and began to look over Shmi Skywalker's diary again. The more she looked over it and read the warm, innocent moments that Shmi wrote about Anakin, the more conflicted the princess felt about him. Leia stood up to look at the night sky from her room's balcony, holding the diary close to her. She was questioning her own emotions and thoughts. Could Vader truly be redeemed? Could he actually be sorry for what he's done? These were things that clouded her mind constantly. She was more conflicted than ever. Leia wished that her brother were here, believing that he could guide her with these emotions of conflict. It's here where Leia heard a faint voice again, the same one she heard last year on Pillio inside the Emperor's vault. She realized this voice wasn't some noise in her head, so she spoke out saying, "Who's there?" In the corner of her bedroom, Leia saw a blue aura. It wasn't too bright. It seemed to be the shape of a human in the dark space. Leia spoke again, asking, "Who is it?" The voice sounded clearer this time, and not as faint. "Leia." The voice spoke again. It told her not to fear him. The figure then manifested into its full form. It was Luke Skywalker, her dead brother. He slowly approached his sister with a warm smile. The glowing blue aura radiating off of him lit the side of her bed as he slowly walked up to her. She had known for a long time and accepted that the ghost of General Kenobi to her had been talking to Luke and telling him things to do. Luke told her about this sometime after The Empire Strikes Back. That meant she had known that a dead guy spoke to Luke. Leia softly called his name.
Luke, you're here. It was you this whole time. The voice I kept hearing.
No one's ever really gone, Leia.
Luke sat at the end of her bed as Leia walked closer to sit next to him.
You're conflicted about our father. I can feel it in you.
That man, that monster is not my father, Luke.
I know you can sense the good in him, as I did. He's saved. He's redeemed himself. Please, you must see that, Leia. You must trust him.
I refuse to believe it. He's caused the Alliance, caused us so much harm.
His eyes gazed down to the floor. There was a short pause. He looked back up to his sister.
In my final moments, he stopped the Emperor from further hurting me. He saved me. The man you once feared died aboard the Death Star. Vader is gone. My father, our father, returned. He is Anakin Skywalker once more. And in time, he can teach you, train you to wield this power that we have. You must see the light and forgive him. Don't let your hatred cloud your judgment. You're his only hope.
You have a power I don't understand and could never have.
You're wrong, Leia. You have that power too. In time, you'll learn to use it as I have.
I'm sorry, Luke. I can't.
Search your feelings. I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate.
She stood up from the side of her bed and faced her back towards Luke. Leia was visibly distressed. The conflict inside of her heart was eating her away.
He hurt Han. He hurt you. All of us, Luke. I can't forgive him. Not after everything he's done.
Then my father is truly dead. I'm sorry, Leia.
There was a slight pause of silence before Leia turned around. She wanted to say one more thing to Luke, but he was gone. She spent the night contemplating her last two conversations with Luke. Now by this point in time, it's been around a year since Luke had died. Leia's well within the first couple of weeks of the new year. With everything that had happened after the night Luke died up until now, her feelings regarding Anakin had softened up. Her wounds had almost healed. Shortly after, Han walked in her room after entering the apartment. He saw how uncomfortable Leia looked, so he asked what was wrong. She told him that she had just seen Luke. At first, Han chuckled, thinking she was joking, but after seeing how distressed she looked, Leia explained what had happened. They then embraced each other with a hug. A couple weeks went by, and Leia dwelled on everything from the past year. Upon remembering and hearing such an honest and reflective response from Kickster, Anakin's childhood friend, and seeing holograms of young Anakin with his mother from when she first acquired her diary, it had influenced her feelings towards him. Reading the diary helped her better understand how different Anakin was from Vader, on top of what Luke told her as a Force spirit, and prior to leaving for the Death Star. Leia was finally able to forgive her father, and let go of the hate she contained for him her whole life. She came to terms with her father's legacy, and no longer feared that her potential children in the far future would fall to the dark side. After she learned that her father was once a young innocent boy, and a fairly decent individual prior to his fall as Vader. But this would take some time to fully set in. A few days before his trial, Leia confronted Anakin in his jail cell. Walking past the corridors, she peeked the glass window where he was kept behind. His head tilted up as he sensed his daughter's presence. Leia requested to be alone and politely dismissed the 2 guards who watched over him from the outside. She took a deep breath and walked closer to Anakin. Leia looked up from where he stood, and their eyes made contact. No longer fearing what the mask represented, she instead focused her feelings on who he was inside. Anakin remained silent. This was the first time in a while they had spoken.
I know that you're not him anymore, but I can't pretend to forget what you did. The people you hurt, the lives and families you destroyed. But I've been trying. I've been trying really hard. After what Luke told me about you, I realized that you're still in my heart. How much I hate you for what you've done. I don't want to hate you anymore. I can't hate you anymore. I can't live the rest of my life with all this anger for you inside of me. I forgive you, Anakin.
As a tear had streamed down Leia's cheek, she wiped it away with the sleeve of her dress. Her eyes were tearful. There was a long pause of silence. Beneath the black mask of Vader, Anakin's eyes had closed in emotional relief. They opened up with tears streaming down his face.
Thank you, Leia.
Leia nodded her head and slowly walked out of the cell. She went to her room, gazing into the warm sunset that casted over Chandrila, while Anakin looked down, contemplating what had just occurred. The only thing he ever wanted, after failing to save Luke, was his daughter's forgiveness. This moment would be a parallel to Anakin and Padme's rumination scene. Anakin's next trial would be facing the consequences of his actions as Darth Vader in front of the New Republic Tribunal. This was only the beginning of a universe with endless possibilities. And this is where we end part 1 of this story.